let's talk about the Devil's Brigade whiskey, right? I mean, I'm right calling it a whiskey.
Yeah, it is. It is a whiskey.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, and there's a lot. It's interesting because while all of your labeling on the products that we've done with you so far have been great, this one just seems a little bit different. This one has a little bit more story to it that's definitely worth getting into and talking about. But so the Devil's Brigade whiskey, I mean, I want to kind of just let you share what is, story-wise, what is the thing about the Devil's Brigade whiskey that people should know?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think that it's kind of part of my story a little bit with Montana and being in the military and specifically Special Forces. The Devil's Brigade unit was basically the original commandos, World War II. And all of our Special Forces units today, both on the American side and the Canadian side, take their lineage from the 1st Special Service Force, which is what they were called. Mm-hmm. And then they got nicknamed the Devil's Brigade, and we can go into that. They're named the Black Devils. That's what the Nazis referred to them. But they were formed in 1942 in Helena, Montana, Fort Harrison.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a very, very secretive unit. They trucked those guys in that they recruited, in boxcars and stuff like that. Very secretive unit. But they're originally formed in 1942 to fight the Nazis in Norway. So it was all about winter warfare. So they did all their training, and they were some of the first paratroopers also. But they were commandos, and they fought with their hands and very good with knives and all their weapon systems, and just some pretty hardcore guys. And they were older. They weren't like 18-year-olds. I mean, I'm sure there were a few, but they basically recruited loggers and miners and game wardens, and I'm sure there were a few hooligans and brigands in there. As you mentioned, the movie, I think it was 1969, but a pretty classic, awesome movie. But it's kind of a story to my background, and I'm in the Montana Special Forces Association. It's Chapter 28, and it's called the Devil's Brigade Chapter. And some of those guys had reached out to me over the years. It was like, hey, Willie, you should do something in honor of the Devil's Brigade, the 1st Special Service Force. And kind of put it on the back burner for a while, but a few of the guys kept talking to me, and I was like, you know what, that's a good idea, and I just want to do it right. Like, I don't want to, take credit for their name. Got to tell the story, and I got the blessing from the Special Forces Association and the 1st Special Service Force Association, and they're like, oh yeah, by all means, do it, tell the story, keep the story alive. So it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Devil's Brigade story from?
Not nearly as much as I'm learning new stuff today, but yes, I am familiar with them.
Yeah. It's I thought it was interesting, Willie, just to expand a little bit on what you mentioned already, the brigade was comprised of, I mean, just what an interesting mix of people: backcountry rangers, soldiers, lumberjacks, north woodsmen, hunters, prospectors, explorers, game wardens, and mountain men who volunteered to join the secretive unit in 1942, as you mentioned. And crazy, they were only in service for 2 years.
Yeah, just about
disbanded in
just
44.
about two years. Yeah, they'd gotten used up, like you're talking about, but a very, very small unit, small numbers.
Yeah.
Very good fighting force. They had some of the highest casualties in World War II, but they also inflicted some of the highest casualties, to the Germans, Nazis.
Wow.
It was a joint unit. It was joint Canadian and American. So it was about 60% American and then about 40% Canadians. And that's where we got our blend from. It's 60% bourbon, which is an American whiskey, our bourbon. And then we use 40% Canadian whiskey from a distillery we work with in Alberta.
Nice.
So it's got that blend, and it's 42% alcohol, which is a take on the V40, the V42 knife.
So yeah, tell us about
42%
that.
alcohol.
Yeah, which we have one right here, like leaning up against the bottle here in the front.
Yeah, Colonel Frederick ended up becoming General Frederick, but he started up the unit, and this was his knife that he designed, and it's a stiletto V42 stiletto knife, but it's got a little skull crusher. You know, it can go through helmets or skulls. But they were commandos, and they were some of the first guys that started wearing, you know, like camouflage, or they'd use like black shoe polish on their faces at night. So they'd sneak around at night, you know, one guy or two guys or maybe four guys, and sneak behind enemy lines and slit the Germans' throats. These were designed to, you know, it's a stiletto, but it's designed to go, you know, between the ribs pretty easily. Go straight to the heart, or, you know, the spleen, lungs, liver, whatever. That's how they got their nickname, was the Black Devils. And on the back of the bottle, there's a German saying there, and I'll probably, you know, mess up the pronunciation, but they had these death cards that they'd have. So they'd slit the Nazis' throats and then leave these death cards, and it basically says the worst is yet to come. So the Nazis nicknamed them the Black Devils.
I love the hat tip to the 42. I mean, like nobody ever proofs anything at 42 proof. So coming up with that as a way to, like, that's really neat. That's fun.
Yeah, and also part of the story is I got to meet some of these guys before they passed away.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know the exact number right now, but you're only talking maybe 10 guys.
Left.
8 guys left,
Yeah.
you know, in U.S. or Canada that are still, because they're all, you know, well over 105 or so.
According to what I saw research-wise, I don't know how accurate it is, but it was roughly 1,800 volunteers for this special force, and 600 were killed.
Right.
In battle, and 1,000 were wounded, and before they were disbanded. So, crazy, you know, out of 1,800, well, 1,200, right? Like, depending on how many of the 1,000 that got wounded that actually survived, that you actually got to meet. The ones that were still alive. I mean, that's a very low number percentage-wise.
Yeah, I remember meeting, you know, Mark Radcliffe and Joe Glass. Some of those guys here, you know, here in Montana. They were in our Montana Special Forces Association chapter, and it was pretty cool to talk to those guys and hear their stories. Joe Glass lived in Helena, but he used to have a bar called the Glass Slipper in Helena. You
That's
know, little small, short guy, but, you know, I remember him telling some stories to me and some of the other younger SF guys that, you know, about knife kills and stuff like that, and we just thought that was, you know, pretty darn cool. And
a couple questions. One, how come? I mean, just out of curiosity, why not have it had just been a 100% American unit versus a combined with Canada?
I don't know if it had to do with the whole winter warfare aspect of it, and they figured, you know, maybe they'll get, you know, more guys that are already showing up with some winter warfare type skills. You know, maybe that was it. I don't really know the why on that, but it was cool. It was one of the first joint commando units.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still all work together today, you know, whether it's the British SAS or, you know, the CANSOF, Canadian Special Forces guys, you know, or JTF2. I mean, we still work with those guys side by side, hand in hand, like today. They're out there doing it today somewhere in Africa or getting ready for whatever's coming down the pipe.
So let's also mention too that part of the labeling you have on here is kind of cool. Every batch, is it by batch? I'm assuming that honors a different soldier that was part of the brigade. And so, could you share a little bit more information about that?
We just thought it'd be interesting, you know, on the back of, because a lot of our other bottles would have, you know, the date and bottled by Willie or bottled by, you know, whoever, at the distillery, or so we thought it'd be neat to each batch is in honor of one of the original forcemen. So we start batch 1, which we've already sold out of. I still have one of the, a remaining batch 1 bottle, but it was Colonel Frederick. Then I think batch 2 was Dave Woon, which was Bill Woon's father, and Bill Woon is like the go-to guy for anything Devil's Brigade history.
Wow.
He lives in Helena, and if you guys ever have a chance to go up and see the museum up there, it's pretty awesome. But Bill Woon can tell you anything about Devil's Brigade. So, and then we did Joe Glass and Mark Radcliffe, and kind of went down the list of guys that I had met or personally knew. And then, family members have been reaching out to us lately, and hey, my dad was, first Special Service Force, and so we kind of look them up. You got to vet it. There's a list of who was and who wasn't. You got to make sure it's all legit. But we've got some other interesting ones, coming down the road.
I'm guessing that in the because you guys have such a great your actual distilling room and everything there, whether you're in Montana or out of Montana and just coming to visit is definitely worth a stop. And you have so much neat memorabilia. Do you have a section devoted for Devil's Brigade type stuff, or is it kind of
not really? There's a couple sections, but it's kind of interspersed throughout. I've kind of got a little bit of layout to my museum, as some of the guys call it, but it's most people probably won't pick up on it. But I've kind of got my Ranger and SF stuff in one area, and kind of cowboy and Western stuff, and like local legend type people, and firefighter stuff over here, and law enforcement or whatever. But it's interesting.
What do you think, Michael?
Cool. I think we need to get to the other side of the mountain more. I mean, I'm familiar with the Bighorn and the moonshine, but I might be well on my way to finding my favorite whiskey with the new stuff.
So what do you think of this?
I like it.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
And I think it's a good mix of, because it's bourbon and Canadian whiskey. Yeah. So, I think a lot of bourbon people will appreciate it, and a lot of people who drink, Pendleton or Crown or Canadian whiskey will appreciate it too. So
because it's been mixed in America, now it's called a whiskey.
Yeah.
It's just your own special blend of whiskey.
Yep. I brought a coin for you too.
Oh yeah, let's talk about
It kind of mentions where they fought at, and mostly Italy, but
yeah, that was one of the things that I saw that I took notes on. The
that's neat. As
you had mentioned, that they were originally trained for the assault mission in Norway that never happened, but they were deployed specifically to the Aleutian Islands, Italy, as you just said.
The Aleutian Islands was to fight the Japanese that had taken over some of the Aleutian Islands, and it wasn't a huge battle or huge skirmish, but the Japanese had just basically left. Maybe they caught wind or something that these dudes are coming over to
the devils are coming, get out of here.
Deal some death, So, yeah, who knows? But they ended up, and they, like I said, they were specifically being trained for Norway, fighting the Germans in Norway, and it had to do something with some hydraulic dam or something like that. And that got diverted, and they ended up going to like Africa and then Italy, and then probably being misused, which a lot of commando and special forces units get misused all the time. They're good at a lot of things, and sure, they can do most everything, but if you misuse those dudes, they're going to end up getting killed or wiped out, and sometimes that's what happens. Because other conventional commanders, you see that today. Some conventional commanders do not know how to employ Rangers or Green Berets or others.
So in what you were talking about, it's the Nazis who were calling them the Black Devils. Their special forces name, did that come from all that, or at the very start were they actually called Devil's Brigade?
No, they were called the First Special Service Force.
Okay, so that became
that was all, like,
a moniker.
Classified information and stuff. And
that's cool.
Yeah, that's their actual name is First Special Service Force, and their nickname was the Devil's Brigade, which the Germans gave them.
Okay, Dumb question of the day. What branch did they fall under?
His Army.
It was Army.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe should have been obvious, but the
mother of all branches, by the way.
That's funny.